So here is my childhood home, 5738 Boston Terrace. I moved in here with my mom and stepdad, or future stepdad, when I was about 3 years old, just before I was 3. It's the first place I remember living. I lived here until I was 19, till after I graduated high school, so it really was my home. We lived down in the basement in number 1. Tiny little apartment, cozy but small. Didn't realize how small it was until we moved. And amazingly, it seems like every nook and cranny was filled with things, neatly packed in, but it was amazing. It was like a clown car when we moved out of there. My first best friend was probably Andy, short for Andrea, who lived right next door to my second best friend lived across the street over there, Monica Grego, lived with her parents and her brother. First time I crossed the street was to go play with her, and my mom watched out of the window to make sure I looked both ways. I think I was about 5. That airplane noise is just a small bit of flavor of what we grew up with. Literally, when the airplanes would go over, sometimes they'd be so low I didn't think they were going to make it to the airport, and everything on our shelves would rattle and shake, kind of like in the movies where you see like the train goes by and everything shakes. Our windows would shake, the knickknacks would shake. Probably right around the time, not long after we moved in, there would be homeless men that slept under the little stairwell, kind of a triangular dark space that's kind of hard to see. So if they were discreet and quiet, sometimes they would be there for 2-3 weeks before the caretaker, Corrine, and her boyfriend, Don, who lived on the 3rd floor, would really be aware that they were around. I remember asking my mom why they slept there. She tried to explain the best she could to a 3-4-year-old what it meant to be homeless. I didn't obviously fully understand what that meant, but my mom never wanted to turn them in and get them in trouble and get them kicked out, so they would be there off and on. We'd feel bad when they got kicked out. Caretaker would put their stuff by the trash. And then when my parents became caretakers when I was 10, by then times had changed and the door was probably locked at about 10 o'clock every night. Over here we have my sledding hill, where I would go with neighborhood friends and spend hours and hours in the winter. I would sled up and down that hill. I remember going home starving, eating lunch in my snow pants, getting dressed back up, and going out again for several more hours of sledding until it was too dark out to stay out. And also there used to be a park behind the trees up on the hill. I don't think it's there anymore, but we used to have lots of fun there. House that my grandparents bought, 5641. They bought it when it was brand new. They were the first owners, and they owned it for over 50 years. Actually, my great aunt June Nelson was her name at the time, bought 5649, the house down a door, and my other great aunt and uncle June Mary and Bud bought the blue house across the street. None of the basements and upstairs were finished. My grandfather and great uncle helped each other finish their upstairs and their basements. My Uncle Bud was really good at electrical and really anything like that. He could figure out how to do it. So where you see the new chain link fence, which I know they've put up recently because my grandfather and I drive by once in a while, just to see how things look. But they used to have a white picket fence that my grandfather built, and I have a picture of him putting the fence up. So here we have the last remaining part of the picket fence that my grandfather built. When I was growing up, there was a piece of fence along the back by the garage with a gate, which I thought was funny. We had to keep that gate closed. I'm not sure why, because the side yard wasn't enclosed, so anyone could walk through. It wasn't like we were trying to keep a dog in or anything. But that's how they wanted it, so close the gate behind you. They also had a little garden back there by that fence. Cucumbers, tomatoes, carrots. I think was about all they still did when I was little. It was bigger before that. Right, and then the garden is right here. Got a picnic table. My grandfather would take the painting drop cloths that he kept in the garage out for us kids, and we'd build forts on the picnic tables with the drop cloth sheets. I still have one of those sheets too. I know I'm hopeless in that sense of saving family things. And I have the, what do you call it, the weather vane that my grandfather had on this garage. This is the garage he built. And inside on the floor in the cement is everyone's name from the family. They drew it in the cement, I think including the dog at the time. And I think they had a foster daughter at the time, so her name's in there too. So another thing I wish I could have taken, but I couldn't. I did take a picture of it. Took a picture of everything before we had to move them. So this is Morse Park. This was our family grade school. My mother and her sisters went here. A great aunt and uncle went here. And I went here from 1st through 3rd grade, and then they started the busing program when we had, I think, school superintendent Richard Green. And then I went to Lauren Goes Wilder. But I loved going to school here. I could walk to my grandma's after school. I walked home with Robbie, who lived next door and was my age. I can't remember my 1st grade teacher. My 2nd grade teacher was Mrs. Coleman, and she was the best teacher in the school, and all of the kids loved her, and we prayed and hoped we would get Miss Coleman, and I got lucky and I was in her class. I believe she was the only African-American staff person at the time. And there were a couple of Asian kids in my class, but otherwise it was a predominantly white school, so you can understand why they were trying to do a better job of integrating us. It's also the place where my parents and grandparents came to vote, and I remember going in with my mom and going into those big clunky old voting booths with all the levers and switches that kind of look like, I don't know why, but they remind me of a Doctor Who time machine. So my lunch lady happened to be my great aunt Chun Mary, who lived across the street from my grandmother. So that was nice. Every day she'd give me my milk, my chocolate milk, when I went through the line. And actually one of the custodians was DB. I can't remember his first name because we always called him DB. But he was a family friend too, so I was kind of surrounded by people from my family and community at the school. You can get a Tombstone pizza. I think I had a birthday party here tonight. Well, I know I had a birthday party here, but I can't remember what age I was. Somewhere between like 7 and 8, I think. So here we have Skylands Bowling Alley. This is where I had my first job. I started when I was 14, and I worked with my stepfather on the weekends. He worked here full-time then. But I worked just Saturday and Sunday afternoon, like noon to 5. I served hot dogs, made milkshakes, and also ran the register and took money for shoes. I also enjoyed growing up bowling here. Kind of the neighborhood bowling alley. 34th Avenue really is like Main Street. It really does feel like a small town when you live over here. My great-grandparents bowled here and hung out here. My stepfather grew up taking lessons from Jenny, as did a lot of other neighborhood kids, so anyone who grew up around here would recognize the name Jenny. Talking with the regulars, we had a lot of regular older men that would come and sit and have coffee and chit-chat. O.C. made the barbecue beef sandwiches, and Mohart, her husband, was always around. So it was kind of a family neighborhood spot. And I enjoyed working here, and I kind of miss it, and knowing it's for sale. So if any of you are interested in owning a bowling alley, I am actually tempted. I wouldn't mind being the bowling alley lady. Can you own a bowling alley and run for city council?